Sandra always believed her life moved in a steady rhythm, guided by work, responsibility, and the expectation that she had to stay strong for everyone around her. She was known for her calm smile, her gentle nature, and the way she carried herself with grace even during the most stressful days. But what people never noticed was the constant pressure she placed on herself, a pressure that grew heavier with every success, every interview, every long night when she pretended she had everything under control. On one particular morning, long before the world woke up, she found herself sitting alone in her kitchen with a cup of warm tea, noticing how her hands trembled slightly. She ignored it because she always ignored such signs, convincing herself that she could manage, that she could push forward, that the world expected her to keep moving without pause. The sun had not yet risen, and the house was quiet in a way that almost felt unreal. She breathed slowly, letting the silence wrap around her, trying to pretend she was at peace. But inside her mind, a soft storm kept spinning. She felt overwhelmed by memories she thought she had buried, by moments she did not allow herself to explore, by emotions she could not fully name. She wondered when she had last spoken honestly to someone about how she truly felt. She tried remembering, but nothing clear came to her. It was as if she had built a strong wall inside herself, a wall that protected her but also isolated her. She did not realize how thick that wall had become until that morning. She looked at her reflection in the window, noticing the tiredness in her eyes. They were not the eyes the world saw on screen. They were softer, dimmer, slightly weighed down by something she had carried for many years. She felt something rise in her chest, a quiet ache, the kind of ache that tells you something has gone unattended for too long, but she pushed it away just as she always did. She inhaled deeply and stood up, trying to start her day the way she usually did, pretending everything was in order. Yet something in her felt different. Something felt unsettled, as if life was preparing her for a moment she could not predict. Later that afternoon, she walked onto the film set with her usual composed manner. The crew greeted her, cameras were being adjusted, lights tested, and makeup artists checked every detail carefully. Everything felt routine, almost mechanical. She moved through the environment as if she were floating, present but not fully connected. She kept reminding herself to stay focused, to stay professional, to keep her head in the scene. But a subtle heaviness kept tugging at her thoughts, reminding her that something was off. She tried shaking it off by distracting herself with small conversations and light jokes, but the feeling stayed. Then, without any warning, Keanu walked in. His presence was not loud, not grand, not demanding. It was something quieter, warmer, almost grounding. He entered the room with his usual calm energy, offering small smiles, gentle greetings, and a kind of simplicity that made everyone around him relax without even knowing why. Sandra noticed him before he even reached her side. There was something about him that always managed to pull her attention, something unspoken and steady. She had worked with him before, shared moments of laughter and trust, and every memory of him was linked to a sense of comfort she rarely felt with others. He approached her with a soft smile, his eyes reflecting the kind of sincerity that was difficult to find in their world. "Morning," he said in his quiet voice, and that simple word felt kinder than any sentence she had heard all day. She answered with a smile she hoped looked natural. She did not want him to see how unsteady she felt inside. She did not want anyone to notice it. They exchanged a few warm words, nothing dramatic, nothing intense, just the kind of conversation that gently settles your breathing. But during the first rehearsal, Sandra felt the pressure inside her chest return stronger. A mixture of exhaustion and emotion swirled in her mind, making it difficult for her to focus on her lines. She tried grounding herself, pressing her fingers lightly against her palm. She tried breathing slowly, but the feeling kept rising, pushing against her calm mask. Keanu noticed before anyone else did. He watched her with quiet attention, not in a dramatic way, not in a concerned stare, but with that kind of subtle care he always carried. During a short break, he stepped closer to her in a way that did not draw attention. He lowered his voice and asked, "Are you okay?" It was such a simple question, but it reached a place inside her she had locked away for years. She forced another smile and nodded, insisting she was fine. She expected him to accept her answer and step back. But Keanu never did that, not with her. He watched her eyes carefully, noticing the slight tremble beneath her calm expression. He understood the difference between someone being tired and someone holding something deeper. He gently placed his hand on her shoulder, a quiet gesture of support, not pressure. "You don't have to say you are fine," he said softly, not pushing her to confess anything, just letting her know she did not need to pretend. That single sentence broke something inside her, not in a painful way, but in a way that felt like a crack forming in the wall she had built. She looked away to hide the sudden warmth in her eyes. She hated the idea of appearing vulnerable in front of anyone, even someone as kind as Keanu. But he did not step away. He stayed near her, offering silence instead of questions, support instead of judgment. That silence felt safer than any conversation she had experienced in years. The day continued, but Sandra felt something shift. She became more aware of the emotional weight she had ignored. Several times, she caught Keanu quietly observing her, making sure she was steady. Not once did he make her feel embarrassed, nor did he treat her differently in front of others. Every small gesture was subtle, respectful, thoughtful, and it helped her breathe more steadily each time. As filming moved into the late evening, exhaustion began pressing harder on her senses. She accidentally stumbled over a prop, something she never did. She whispered an apology and tried to regain her balance, but for a second she froze, unable to steady herself. Her mind blanked, her breathing became tight, and the world around her felt slightly blurred. No one else saw it happen quickly enough. Except Keanu. He stepped forward instantly, steadying her with his hands, giving her a grounded presence that helped her regain her breath. He did not make a scene. He did not call attention. He simply guided her a few steps away from the bright lights and whispered gently, "Take a moment." She closed her eyes, trying not to let the emotion break through. She did not want to cry. She could not cry here. She tried swallowing the tightness in her throat, but her chest felt heavy, too heavy to hide. Keanu stayed with her, silent and patient, giving her the space she needed without asking for explanations. The crew continued preparing the next shot, unaware of what had just happened. Sandra felt her hands tremble again, and this time she could not hide it. She whispered, almost broken, "I don't know why I feel like this today." It was the closest she had come to admitting she was struggling. Keanu nodded gently, his voice barely above a whisper. "Maybe you finally got tired of being stronger than you needed to be." His words pierced through the silence inside her. They were not dramatic. They were not romantic. They were simply true, painfully, beautifully true. She looked at him, and for the first time in a long while, she felt seen. Not the actress, not the public figure, not the strong one, just her. Someone who was tired, someone who needed a moment. He let her breathe, let her settle, let her gather herself, and when she finally looked steady again, he asked quietly, "Do you want to step outside for a minute?" She hesitated, torn between the need to appear composed and the desperate need for air. But she nodded, and the two of them slipped out through a side door, stepping into the cool night. Outside, the air felt calm and open, the sky dim but comforting. Sandra inhaled deeply, feeling the weight inside her chest loosen just a little. She felt Keanu standing beside her, quiet, supportive, not intrusive. He did not ask her to talk. He did not push her to reveal anything. He simply let her exist in that moment without pressure. That simple presence brought her more comfort than she expected. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft and unsteady. "I think I forgot how to rest." Keanu nodded slowly, understanding more than she expected. "Sometimes life teaches you to run so fast that stopping feels dangerous," he replied. "But it is. Sometimes stopping is the only way to stay whole." His words hit something deep inside her again, not because they were poetic, but because they were real. She felt the gentle truth in them echo through her thoughts. She turned slightly toward him, studying his calm expression, the sincerity in his eyes. She realized, perhaps for the first time, that there was a moment years ago when he had impacted her life in a way she never fully acknowledged. A moment she had buried. A moment she had been afraid to revisit. And now, standing beside him in the quiet night, that memory began rising slowly. But before she could speak, before she could explore the truth forming in her heart, someone from the crew opened the door and called for them to return. Sandra inhaled sharply, trying to regain her composure again, but something inside her had already shifted. She knew she could not hide from this feeling much longer. Keanu touched her arm gently and whispered, "We will come back to this." She felt her breath hitch, not from fear, but from the intensity of the unspoken truth lingering between them. She followed him back inside. But in her chest, one question kept building, heavier with each step. Why did that one memory return now? And why did it still hurt so deeply? The rest of the evening moved forward with scenes, rehearsals, and technical adjustments. But Sandra felt strangely disconnected from the routine she normally handled with ease. Every small light from the cameras looked brighter than usual. Every sound from the set felt louder. And every step she took carried a quiet awareness that something inside her had unlocked itself earlier beside Keanu. She kept trying to push her attention back into the work, but her thoughts drifted repeatedly toward the memory she had avoided for years. a memory connected to a moment when Keanu had helped her without fully understanding how deeply he affected her that day. She felt the memory rising like a tide, but each time she tried to grasp it, her mind hesitated as if protecting her from something she had not yet processed. Throughout the last half of the shoot, Keanu remained close but respectful. He did not hover or question her. Instead, he moved with his usual calm confidence, performing his scenes, listening to directions, and offering small, supportive glances whenever she looked uncertain. Those glances grounded her, even when she felt overwhelmed. She did not know if he could sense how unstable her thoughts were, or if he simply understood her more deeply than she expected. Either way, his presence kept her steady enough to finish the day without breaking in front of the crew. When the director finally called it a wrap for the night, Sandra felt relief mixed with exhaustion. She packed her things slowly, hoping the quiet movement might help her gather herself. She noticed Keanu still inside the room, speaking softly with the stunt coordinator. He looked relaxed, but every now and then he glanced at her as if checking whether she needed him. She tried to avoid his gaze because she feared that if he looked at her too gently, she might reveal more than she intended. When she stepped outside into the hallway, she felt the cool air brush across her skin, and for a moment, she thought she could simply walk to her car and pretend nothing had happened earlier. She almost convinced herself to leave quietly. But Keanu followed her before she reached the exit. Footsteps were soft yet steady, and when he slowed beside her, she felt the same calm energy he carried on set. "You left quickly," he said with a gentle tone that held no judgment. She nodded and offered a tired smile. "It was a long day," she replied, though both of them knew her exhaustion had deeper roots than that. Keanu studied her expression for a moment, then spoke with quiet honesty. "You were not yourself today," he said, "and that is okay. Everyone has days when something inside becomes loud." His words struck her again. There was something about the way he spoke that always felt truthful without being harsh. She wanted to deny it to protect her emotional walls, but she found herself exhaling in a way that revealed more than she intended. "I guess I could not hold everything together today," she whispered. He nodded, accepting her vulnerability instead of turning it into a dramatic moment. "You do not have to hold everything together all the time," he said. "Sometimes letting a crack appear is the only way light can enter." She looked at him, surprised by the quiet wisdom in his voice. She felt her heartbeat shift, becoming heavier but also warmer. She walked with him toward the exit, unsure whether she wanted to speak or remain silent. The night air outside was cool and comforting, carrying a faint scent of nearby trees and the softness of the dark sky. She breathed it in as though it could steady her. Keanu walked slowly beside her, matching her pace without forcing conversation. The parking lot was dimly lit, peaceful in a way that contrasted sharply with the intense energy of the film set. Sandra leaned against her car door, trying to find the right words for the weight pressing inside her chest. Keanu leaned against the nearby railing, giving her space but staying close enough for comfort. Several long seconds passed before she spoke. "Today reminded me of something," she said softly, her voice hesitating. Keanu lifted his eyes toward her, offering full attention. "Something from years ago that I never really talked about." He remained silent, not rushing her, not pushing her. Sandra swallowed gently, feeling her throat tight. "It was a moment when you did something for me without knowing how much it meant," she added, her voice trembling slightly. "I think I buried the memory because it scared me how deeply it affected me." Keanu stepped closer, but only slightly. "You do not have to say it now," he said, "but whenever you feel ready, I will listen." She nodded, appreciating the patience in his voice. Yet something inside her felt compelled to continue, as if the moment she had feared for years was asking to be acknowledged. She opened her mouth to speak, but the words stuck in her throat, trapped by emotion and hesitation. She hugged her arms around herself, feeling vulnerable in a way she had not allowed herself to feel in a long time. Keanu noticed her struggle and moved one step closer. His voice softened even more. "Sandra," he said, "you are safe to say anything. You are not alone." His words hit her with unexpected force. She looked at him, seeing the sincerity in his eyes, the quiet promise that he would not judge her. Something inside her finally began to loosen. "It was during a time when I felt completely lost," she whispered, her voice fragile. "I was dealing with something personal, something painful, and I had no idea how to stay strong. I never told anyone because I was afraid to look weak." Keanu's expression softened even more, his eyes reflecting compassion. "Strength is not about hiding pain," he said. "It is about surviving it." Her eyes stung, but she looked down, not wanting him to see. "You showed up that day," she said, "and you said something so simple, but it changed everything. I do not think you even remember it. Keanu tilted his head slightly. What did I say? Before she could answer, her breath caught in her throat. The memory pressed against her mind, clearer now, more vivid, carrying both comfort and pain. She felt her chest tighten as if the truth she had suppressed for too long was trying to break free. Keanu stepped even closer, sensing her emotional conflict. He placed his hand gently over hers, offering warmth without pressure. What did I say, Sandra? He repeated in a soft voice that invited honesty. Her lips parted, but before the words could escape, a sudden shout from the studio entrance interrupted the moment. A crew member called Keanu's name urgently, waving him back toward the building. Keanu glanced at the person, then back at her, torn between responsibility and concern. The crew member shouted again, louder this time, saying they needed him immediately for a rapid reshoot adjustment before the equipment team finished the reset. Keanu looked at Sandra with worry in his eyes. I have to go, he said gently, but we are not done. We will talk about this. You do not have to carry this alone. Her heart felt suspended between relief and disappointment. She nodded slowly. Go, she whispered, though something inside her desperately wished he could stay just a little longer. Keanu squeezed her hand before stepping away, his gaze lingering on her with a silent promise. As he walked back toward the building, Sandra leaned against her car again, feeling the emotional wave she had held back begin to rise inside her. The memory was so close now, its edges sharpened, its pain resurfacing, its significance undeniable. She closed her eyes and let the cool night air brush against her face, trying to calm her racing heart. She whispered to herself almost shakily, why now? Why does this memory return now? But before she could gather her thoughts, her phone vibrated inside her bag. She hesitated before reaching for it. The screen lit up with an unexpected name. Her stomach dropped the moment she saw it. The message preview read, I know the truth you never told him. Her breath stopped. The world seemed to quiet around her. The memory she had feared was no longer just a memory. It was becoming real again the moment Sandra saw the message. Her body froze as if time had suddenly thickened around her. The parking lot that had felt calm just seconds earlier now seemed colder, heavier, and strangely darker. She stared at the words on her phone's screen, unable to blink, unable to breathe normally, unable to understand how someone could reach into a part of her life she never shared with anyone. Her fingers tightened around the phone, and her pulse began to race as a familiar anxiety washed over her. She read the message again, hoping she had misread it, but the sentence remained the same, sharp and invasive, cutting straight into the memory she had spent years avoiding. She swallowed hard, trying to steady her breathing, but her chest felt tight. The words echoed in her mind repeatedly, each repetition pulling up fragments of the memory she had tried so hard to suppress. She looked around the quiet parking lot, suddenly aware of every sound, every shadow, even the faint hum of distant traffic. The message felt like a whisper from the past, a warning, a threat, or perhaps a push forcing her to face something she had avoided for far too long. She felt vulnerable in a way she had not felt earlier, even when she had almost broken down in front of Keanu. The message came from an unknown number, one she had never seen before. She hesitated before opening the full message thread, afraid of what else she might find. Her thumb hovered above the screen, but her mind kept circling around the same urgent question. Who could possibly know what she hid? She had guarded that memory so tightly that even she rarely allowed herself to think about it. But someone knew. Someone had seen what she thought was invisible. Or maybe someone from her past had resurfaced unexpectedly. She forced herself to tap the screen, opening the full message thread. There was only one line, the same line she had seen in the preview. No introduction, no explanation, nothing else. Just the unsettling sentence that pulled her entire emotional world into chaos. She looked around again, as if expecting someone to appear from the shadows, watching her reaction. But the parking lot remained still and empty, and the only movement came from a faint breeze brushing against her hair. She leaned back into the seat of her car without getting inside, allowing the door to support her as she tried to figure out what to do. Her breathing felt uneven, and she pressed her fingers to her forehead, trying to calm herself. The message did not make sense. It did not belong to her present life. It was a ghost from a part of her past she had carefully locked away because she feared what acknowledging it would change. She whispered softly, "Who sent this?" But her own voice sounded distant, swallowed by the night. Her first instinct was to delete the message and pretend it never happened. She imagined closing her eyes, blocking it out, and forcing herself to believe it was some random wrong number or a mistake. But she could not do it. She could not ignore the way her heart reacted. She could not dismiss the way her mind instantly knew which truth the message referred to, even though she had never spoken about it. The memory was too real, too personal, too specific. She felt a warmth of shame and sadness mixing together inside her, emotions she hoped she would never have to revisit. As she stood there in the cool air, her thoughts drifted back to the day she had almost spoken the truth to Keanu years ago. She remembered how close she had been to telling him, how vulnerable she felt at the time, and how the moment slipped away before she could say anything. She remembered why she chose to remain silent. She remembered the fear that the truth would damage something important between them, something delicate, something she valued too much to risk. And now, all those buried emotions returned with force, swirling inside her like a storm she could not stop. She forced herself to breathe deeply, trying to grasp some clarity through the confusion. She knew she needed to talk to Keanu, but she also knew she could not tell him anything until she understood who sent the message and how they knew. She needed time to think, time to digest the shock, time to rebuild enough emotional strength to face what had suddenly resurfaced. She put her phone inside her bag and leaned her head back, closing her eyes for a moment. The cool night wind helped her calm her pulse slightly, but the heaviness inside her did not fade. She considered going back inside the building to speak to Keanu, but she stopped herself. She knew he was busy with a reshoot, and she did not want to interrupt him, especially when her emotions were so unstable. She needed to process this alone first. She needed space. She finally opened her car door, sat inside, and placed both hands on the steering wheel. She stared at the dashboard for a long moment, letting the quietness inside the car soothe her in a way nothing else could. As she started the engine, the message kept playing in her mind. She drove home slowly, focusing on the road but unable to escape the weight pressing on her chest. Every passing streetlight highlighted fragments of the memory she had buried. She tried pushing them away, but they kept returning, louder and clearer each time. By the time she reached her house, she felt emotionally drained. She parked the car, sat still for a few more seconds, and then slowly made her way inside. Her home greeted her with silence, the kind of silence that usually brought her comfort but now felt unsettling. She kicked off her shoes and placed her bag on the counter before heading straight to the living room. She sat on the couch and pulled a soft blanket around her even though she was not cold. She needed something to hold, something to anchor her. She closed her eyes, allowing the weight of the night to settle around her. The memory from her past, the one she feared, touched the edge of her mind, and she almost let it surface fully. But before it could form completely, her phone vibrated again. Her heart leaped into her throat. She reached for the phone with tense fingers and checked the screen. It was another message from the same unknown number. Her breath caught as she opened it. This time it said, "You cannot run from what happened. He deserves to know." She felt her whole body tense and a wave of disbelief washed over her. She whispered to herself, "Why now? Why this? Why is this happening?" She felt the pressure inside her chest rising again, stronger than before. Her fingers trembled as she held the phone, and she felt a cold tightness spreading through her stomach. The words struck her harder than the first message. Not only did the sender know her secret, they believed Keanu deserved to know it. Her pulse quickened, her breath became uneven, and she felt a familiar fear creeping up her spine. This was no random text. This was intentional. This was personal. She stared at the message for a long moment before forcing herself to type a response. Her fingers hesitated on the keys, but she finally typed, "Who is this?" She pressed send, then held the phone tightly as she waited. Several seconds passed, then a minute, then two. She felt her anxiety building with each passing moment of silence. The room felt heavier, the air felt thicker, and she felt her heartbeat in her throat. Finally, the phone vibrated. She inhaled sharply and opened the message. But the response only deepened the confusion and fear. Someone who was there the day everything changed. Her breath left her body in a single, shaky exhale. She felt her legs weaken, and she leaned further into the couch, holding the phone as if it were the only thing connecting her to the reality of what she was reading. Someone was there. Someone witnessed everything. Someone saw what she thought no one else had seen. The memory she had tried so hard to forget was now pushing itself fully into the present, demanding attention. She felt her heart racing. She whispered, "No, this cannot be possible," but the truth was already forming inside her mind. The day she feared, the day she buried, the day she kept hidden from everyone including herself was no longer safely locked away. It was about to return with consequences she could not predict. She held the phone close, unsure whether she wanted another message or feared it. But before she could decide, her phone buzzed again, this time not with a message but with a call. The unknown number flashed across the screen. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Her pulse hammered in her ears. She hesitated. Her hand trembled as she hovered over the answer button. She knew that everything would change the moment she picked up the call. But the phone kept ringing, and she knew she could not avoid it forever. The phone continued ringing in Sandra's hand, each vibration echoing through her chest, as if the sound itself carried the weight of the past she had spent years hiding. She stared at the screen, frozen between fear and the desperate need for answers. The unknown number glowed softly in the dim living room, waiting for her to choose whether she would finally face what she had run from or remain caught in the quiet panic tightening slowly around her breath. By the fourth ring, her heart felt like it was beating too fast. She whispered to herself, "Just answer it, just do it." But her hand trembled too much to move toward the screen. She felt a pressure in her throat, the same pressure she used to feel during moments when life pushed harder than she could handle. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, trying to gather the strength inside her, and with a shaky exhale, she pressed the button. The ringing stopped instantly. Silence filled the room. For a moment, she thought the caller hung up, but then she heard it, soft breathing on the other end of the line, steady, deliberate, almost as if the caller wanted her to feel their presence before speaking. The hairs on her arms rose slowly. She gripped the phone tighter, her voice barely steady as she said, "Who is this?" A pause followed, long enough to make her heart pound louder in her ears. Then a voice finally spoke, quiet but firm, sounding like someone who had rehearsed every word carefully. "You know who I am." The voice was familiar in a distant way, but not enough to place immediately. It carried a calm coldness, not threatening, not aggressive, but certain. Sandra swallowed, trying to steady her breath. "I don't," she said, her voice soft but tense. "If you have something to say, say it." The caller took a slow breath, as if organizing their thoughts. "You have been avoiding the truth for many years," the voice said gently. "You think burying it protects you, but all it has done is create distance between you and the people who care about you." Sandra felt her chest tighten. She cleared her throat softly. "What truth?" she whispered, even though part of her already knew. She felt the memory tugging at her mind again, stronger now, unwilling to remain hidden. The caller continued speaking, their tone steady but unmistakably personal. "The truth about the day he changed your life." Her breath stopped. She felt a strange warmth in her hands, a rush of memory pushing through the walls she had built. She leaned forward on the couch, her voice trembling. "You need to tell me who you are and what you think you know," she whispered. Another quiet pause followed before the voice replied. "I was there," the caller said. "I saw everything that happened. I saw the moment he stepped in when you were falling apart. I saw the way you looked at him that day, and I saw what you did afterward." A wave of coldness swept through her body. She pressed a hand to her chest as if she could calm the sharp ache forming inside her. "You have the wrong person," she said, but her voice broke slightly, revealing more emotion than she intended. The caller responded softly, "No, I don't." She closed her eyes. She remembered the moment she had felt seen earlier outside the studio. The moment Keanu told her she didn't have to pretend she was fine. That feeling was the same one she had felt years ago, the day everything changed. The day she hid something so painful she didn't dare confront it. And now, someone was forcing that memory back into her life. The caller's voice softened even more. "He deserves the truth, Sandra. You owe him that much." She felt tears sting her eyes. "You don't understand," she whispered. "It wasn't that simple. I couldn't tell him. I couldn't tell anyone. I was scared. I was hurting. I did what I thought was right at the time." The voice sighed quietly, as though full of pity rather than anger. "But you still carry it, and it is breaking you slowly." She pressed her hand deeper into her chest, her breath trembling. She whispered, "Why are you doing this now? Why bring this back?" The caller replied calmly, "Because he sees you slipping again and he does not know why. Because he cares more than you realize. Because this secret is something you cannot carry alone anymore." Sandra wiped a tear from her cheek, her hands trembling uncontrollably. "Please," she said softly, "tell me who you are." The voice hesitated, then answered with quiet certainty. "I am someone who stayed silent too long, someone who watched both of you drift apart because of something neither of you dared to address." Sandra leaned back, her mind spinning. "What do you want from me?" she whispered. The caller paused before responding. I want you to tell him the truth before he hears it from someone else." Her breath faltered. "Someone else?" she repeated, her stomach twisting with dread. "What do you mean, someone else?" The caller took another slow breath. "I am not the only one who knows, and not everyone has good intentions." A wave of panic passed through her body. She felt cold, dizzy, overwhelmed by the fear that someone might expose her secret in a harmful way. "Who else knows?" she whispered urgently. The voice answered softly. "Someone who will not protect you, someone who thinks telling the truth publicly would be a way to gain something for themselves." Sandra felt her throat tighten painfully. The idea that someone might use her past to create chaos in her present terrified her. She whispered desperately, "Please, who is it?" The caller refused to answer directly. "You need to tell him before they do. You cannot control what others will do, but you can control how he hears it." A long silence stretched between them. Sandra shook her head slowly. "You don't understand what that truth will do," she said, her voice unsteady. "It will change everything." The caller replied, "Yes, it will, but sometimes everything needs to change." Sandra felt her breath weaken again. The room felt small, the air too thin. She struggled to speak, but finally managed. "I can't just call him and say something like this. I don't know how to even begin." The voice softened further. "You will find the way, but you have to do it soon." Before she could say anything, the caller continued, "He is on his way to you right now." Her eyes widened, her breath caught. "What?" she whispered. The caller added calmly, "He left the studio early. He knew something was wrong. He wanted to make sure you were okay." Sandra's heart pounded wildly. The voice concluded with a final, gentle warning. "Tell him what happened before someone else forces it into the open." The line went dead. Sandra stared at the phone in complete shock. Her heartbeat echoed inside her chest, heavy and fast. She slowly stood from the couch, her legs unsteady, her hands cold, her entire body trembling with fear and anticipation. Keanu was coming, and she still did not know how to tell him the truth about the day that changed everything. She moved toward the window, her breath shaky as she peeked outside. Then her eyes widened as she saw headlights approaching her driveway. The soft glow of the headlights moving slowly into her driveway sent a jolt of panic through Sandra's entire body. Her breath shortened, her heartbeat pounded against her ribs, and her palms grew cold as she stared out the window, frozen in place. For a moment she hoped the lights belonged to a neighbor or a delivery driver or anyone other than the one person she was terrified yet desperate to see. But as the car rolled to a gentle stop, her chest tightened even more. She recognized the shape of the vehicle, the steady way it came to a halt, the calm presence it carried even from a distance. There was no doubt, it was Keanu. She stepped back from the window instinctively, her breath trembling as she pressed a hand to her chest. She whispered to herself, "I am not ready, I am not ready," even though she knew she could not hide from him anymore. The phone call had shattered any illusion she had that this secret could remain buried. Now that he was here, standing right outside her home, she felt the full weight of the truth pressing down on her, demanding to be faced. She heard the car door open gently, followed by the quiet thud as it closed. Footsteps approached her porch, each one sending another wave of fear and emotion through her body. She turned toward the living room, trying to calm herself, trying to find words she had avoided for years, but her mind felt tangled in panic. She moved toward the hallway, pacing anxiously, gripping her hands tightly together as if she could hold herself steady through sheer force. A soft knock came at the door. One single knock. Not urgent, not forceful, just calm and respectful, the kind of knock that belonged to someone who cared enough not to startle her. She inhaled deeply, trying to steady her breath, but her chest still felt tight. She walked slowly to the door, her legs unsteady, her mind racing. She paused with her hand on the doorknob, closed her eyes, and whispered, "Please let me find the strength for this." Then she opened the door. There he was. Keanu stood on her doorstep with a gentle expression, his eyes full of worry and something deeper, something she had always felt but never dared to fully acknowledge. His presence was steady, grounding, comforting, but tonight it also carried a quiet intensity. He studied her carefully, noticing the way her shoulders were tense, the redness in her eyes, the slight tremble in her breath. He understood immediately that something was wrong, but he did not push forward or demand answers. He simply said, "I came to check on you." Her throat tightened. She forced a small nod. "I know," she whispered. She stepped aside, allowing him in, and he walked quietly into her living room, pausing to give her space. She closed the door behind him and leaned against it for a moment, her heart pounding. She felt the air shift the moment he entered, as if his presence alone made the room warmer, safer, but also more emotionally charged. Keanu turned toward her slowly. "You looked shaken earlier," he said softly. "I could tell something was coming back to you. I did not want you to be alone with it tonight." She swallowed hard, feeling her chest grow even tighter. She walked toward the couch without saying a word and sat down, pulling the blanket over her lap again. He joined her but left a respectful distance, waiting patiently, giving her the freedom to speak when she was ready. She stared at her hands, unable to lift her gaze. The silence between them held weight, but it was a gentle weight, not oppressive. He waited with the same steady patience he had shown earlier that day, his presence an anchor in the storm swirling inside her. After several long seconds, he spoke again, his voice quiet and sincere. "Sandra, whatever it is, you do not have to carry it alone anymore. If something from the past is hurting you, I want to understand." Her breath broke slightly, her lips trembled as she whispered, "I don't know how to tell you." He shifted closer, not enough to overwhelm her, but enough to let her feel his warmth. "Start anywhere," he said gently. "I will listen to all of it." She closed her eyes, feeling tears forming again. "Someone contacted me tonight," she whispered. "Someone who knows something I thought no one knew." He frowned slightly, not with frustration, but with concern. "What did they say?" he asked softly. She hesitated, then reached for her bag. Her hands shook as she pulled out her phone and handed it to him. He took it carefully, scrolling through the messages, his eyes narrowing slightly as he read each line. He did not speak as he read, but his jaw tightened, and his expression shifted from concern to something more protective. When he reached the line that said, "He deserves to know," he exhaled slowly, returning the phone to her with quiet seriousness. He looked directly into her eyes. "What truth are they talking about?" he asked gently. It was not a demand, not pressure, but a question wrapped in concern and trust. She looked away, her breath trembling. "I never wanted you to know," she whispered. "I never wanted anyone to know." He leaned closer, his voice steady. "Whatever happened, you are safe with me. Nothing you say will change that." She felt the warmth of his sincerity, the strength of his reassurance, and it broke something open inside her. The memory she had buried for years began rising, full and heavy. She wiped her eyes with her sleeve, then whispered, "It happened years ago, during a time when everything felt like it was falling apart. I was trying to pretend I was okay, but inside I felt like I was breaking." Keanu listened, leaning in slightly, his eyes soft with empathy. She continued, her voice shaking. "That day I was overwhelmed. I felt like I was losing control. I felt scared, alone, and so confused. I don't think you remember, but you found me crying in a quiet corner of the set. I tried hiding it, but you saw it, and you didn't ask questions. You just sat with me quietly for a long time. You didn't judge me. You didn't push me. You were just there. And that meant more to me than I ever admitted." His expression softened deeply, but there was confusion in his eyes. "I remember pieces of that day," he said softly, "but I do not remember you hiding anything from me." She inhaled shakily. "That's because you didn't know what happened before you found me." She stopped speaking as her voice caught again, and tears slowly slid down her cheeks. Keanu shifted even closer, his voice full of concern. "What happened before I got there?" he asked gently. "What hurt you so much?" Her breath trembled as she tried to speak. "Someone had told me something cruel," she whispered. "Something that broke me, something about you." Keanu's eyes widened slightly. "About me," he said softly. "What did they say?" She wiped her tears, trying to steady herself. "Someone told me that you were disappointed in me," she whispered shakily. "That you felt I wasn't strong enough for the projects we were doing, that you thought I was becoming a problem, that you felt I couldn't carry myself professionally anymore." Her voice broke on the last words. "And I believed it. I believed every word because that day I felt fragile and insecure, and I thought you had finally lost patience with me." Keanu's entire expression shifted. Shock, confusion, and something like sadness crossed his face. He leaned forward abruptly. "Sandra," he said quietly but firmly, "I never said anything like that, never, not even once." She shook her head. "I know that now, but back then I believed it, and it destroyed me. I didn't want you to see me that vulnerable, so when you found me crying, I pretended it was something else." Keanu stared at her with deep sadness in his eyes. "Who told you that?" he asked, his voice softer but edged with disbelief. She shook her head slowly. "I never found out. They never showed their face. They said it quickly, walked away, and I was too shocked to chase after them." He inhaled deeply, absorbing every word. "And you carried that alone all these years," he whispered. She nodded, wiping more tears. I did, because I didn't want you to think I was weak. I didn't want to burden you. I didn't want to risk changing how you saw me. Keanu reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. She didn't. He placed a gentle hand over hers, his warmth grounding her. Sandra, he said with quiet intensity, you have never been a burden, not then, not now, not ever. I wish you had told me. I wish I could have protected you from that hurt. She broke down quietly, tears falling more freely now. His hand tightened slightly in reassurance. You believed a lie, he whispered. A lie someone used to hurt you for reasons we do not yet understand. She looked up at him with shaken eyes. Why would someone do that? She whispered. Keanu shook his head slowly. I do not know, he said, but someone knew, someone watched, and someone is still watching. The thought sent a chill through her body. She took a shaky breath. The caller said someone else knows too, she whispered. Someone who wants to tell the truth in a harmful way. Keanu leaned in even closer, his expression serious. Then we need to find out who, and we need to understand what they want. She nodded slowly, her breath still unsteady. There is more, she whispered. The caller said they were there that day, they saw everything. Keanu's eyes darkened with concern. Someone from the set, he said quietly. Someone who had access to both of us, someone who saw your pain. She swallowed hard. They said I need to tell you before the other person speaks first. He squeezed her hand, his voice warm but firm. Then tell me everything. I am here. I am not leaving. She inhaled shakily, gathering the courage she had avoided for years. There is one more part of the truth, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Keanu leaned in, his eyes focused on her with complete attention. What part? He asked softly. She took a deep, trembling breath. The thing I never told you is why their words broke me so deeply. It wasn't just the insult. It was because of how I felt about you. Keanu's eyes widened slightly, the air shifting between them instantly. Before he could speak, before she could continue, before the moment could unfold. Her phone vibrated again. She looked down. Another message from the unknown number. This one said, he is not the only one who deserves the truth. Meet me tomorrow, or I will tell everyone. Her entire body went cold. Keanu watched her reaction, his eyes darkening with concern. What does it say? He asked quietly. Sandra looked up at him with trembling hands. They want to meet, she whispered. And if I don't, they will expose everything. For several long seconds, Sandra could not move. The message on her phone felt like a cold weight pressing firmly against her chest, making it difficult for her to breathe. The words repeated in her mind with sharp clarity, louder than the silence in the room, louder than the hum of the night air drifting through the windows. She felt frozen between fear and dread, unable to look away from the message that threatened to unravel everything she had worked so hard to protect. Keanu watched her intently, noticing how pale she had suddenly become. He leaned forward, his voice calm but firm. Sandra, he said softly, let me see the message. She hesitated, her fingers trembling as she lifted her phone. She felt vulnerable in a way she had not felt in years, but she handed the device to him slowly. He read the text, and his expression darkened with quiet resolve. He looked up at her with steady eyes. This is not okay, he said with a rare seriousness. This is someone trying to control you through fear. She swallowed softly, her voice weak. I know, she whispered, but I don't know who it is or what they want. Keanu shifted closer until his knee touched the edge of the couch, grounding her with his calm presence. We will figure it out together, he said. You will not go through this alone. His reassurance brought warmth to her heart, but the fear inside her did not fully fade. She leaned back into the couch, letting the blanket fall around her legs while her mind raced through possibilities. She had been careful, she had been private, she had carried her pain quietly for years. The idea that someone knew her secret, someone who had been there that day, felt deeply unsettling. Keanu placed her phone gently on the table and turned toward her, his eyes softer now. You said earlier that the reason the lie hurt so much was because of how you felt about me, he said slowly. I want you to know you can tell me the rest when you are ready. There is no pressure, but the truth cannot be used against you. You deserve the chance to speak it on your own terms. Her breath trembled. She wiped her eyes again and met his gaze for the first time since the message had arrived. I cared about you so much, she whispered. More than I allowed myself to admit, and that day, hearing that you were disappointed in me broke something inside me because I thought you saw me differently. I thought I had ruined something important between us. I felt ashamed, and I didn't know how to face you." Keanu listened with unwavering attention, his expression gentle and full of understanding. "I never saw you as anything less than strong," he said quietly. "And what happened that day was not your fault. Someone else hurt you. Someone else planted a lie, and they did it because they wanted to create distance between us." She looked down, tears gathering again. "Why would anyone want that?" she whispered. Keanu took a slow breath. "Because sometimes people act out of jealousy, insecurity, or personal gain," he said gently. "Maybe someone felt threatened by how well we worked together. Maybe someone wanted something you had. Maybe someone misunderstood our friendship and wanted to break it." He paused, then added softly, "But none of that changes what is real between us." She let his words sink into her, feeling them slowly soften the tightness in her chest. She whispered, "But what if telling you everything ruins things now?" He shook his head. "The only thing that ruins something is silence when honesty is needed." He looked at her with a tenderness she felt deep in her heart. "The truth does not break real connection, lies do." His voice was steady, warm, grounding, and for the first time in a long time she felt the strength to continue. She inhaled deeply and whispered, "The truth is that I cared about you in a way that scared me. I cared more than I thought was appropriate, more than I thought was safe. And when someone told me you were disappointed in me, I believed it because I already feared I wasn't enough. I thought my feelings were a burden. I thought if you knew how much you mattered to me, you would pull away." Keanu's expression softened with deep emotion. He reached out and gently placed his hand over hers again. "I would never have pulled away," he whispered. "If anything, I would have stepped closer." She felt her breath catch. Warmth spread through her chest in a slow wave, quiet and overwhelming. She whispered, "I didn't know." "You were not meant to know then," he said. "Because you were hurting, because someone used your vulnerability against you, but you know now, and that is what matters." His hand remained on hers, steady and warm. She leaned slightly toward him, not out of fear but out of trust, allowing herself to feel the comfort his presence offered. For a moment, they sat in silence, letting the truth rest between them. Eventually, she whispered, "What about the message? What if they really tell everyone?" Keanu straightened slightly, his tone shifting to something protective. "Then we confront it before they can use it against you," he said. "If they want to meet tomorrow, then I will go with you. We face this together." She looked up quickly. "No," she said softly, shaking her head. "They said they wanted me alone." Keanu's jaw tightened. "I will not let you walk into something unsafe. We can go together, and if they insist on speaking to you privately, I can stay nearby. I will not leave you to face this alone." She swallowed hard, realizing how deeply his support eased the fear pressing against her. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't know what I would do without you." He touched her shoulder gently. "You do not have to know I am here." They sat close together, letting the moment settle. After a long silence, she leaned her head slightly toward him, and he moved just enough for her to rest gently against his shoulder. He did not shift away. He did not question it. He simply let her stay, offering the quiet strength she had needed for so long. Eventually, exhaustion began to pull at her. Her body felt heavy, drained by the emotional weight of the night. Keanu noticed her breathing soften and whispered, "You should rest." She shook her head lightly. "I can't sleep," he nodded. "Then just breathe, I am here." They remained that way until the tension inside her slowly loosened. But even as she rested against his shoulder, her mind returned to the message. The meeting. The threat. The truth finally catching up with her. The next morning came faster than she expected. She barely slept, her mind replaying every possibility, every fear, every memory. Keanu never left. He stayed nearby the entire night, sitting in a chair close to her couch, keeping watch quietly and respectfully. When she opened her eyes and saw him sitting there, offering a gentle smile, something inside her softened. "We will handle today together," he said. She nodded, though her stomach twisted with nerves. She checked her phone. A new message had arrived. 11:30 a.m. at the old studio parking lot. Come alone. She felt her chest tighten again. Keanu read over her shoulder gently. "You are not going alone," he said firmly. "I will be close enough to help." They left together. The drive felt longer than it actually was, filled with silence, tension, and unspoken questions. When they reached the old studio lot, the area looked quiet, almost abandoned. Sandra's hands shook slightly as she stepped out of the car. "I will stay right here," Keanu said gently. "I will not leave no matter what." She nodded, breathed in deeply, and walked toward the center of the lot where someone stood waiting. As she approached, her breath caught. The person turned around slowly, and Sandra recognized them instantly. It was someone who had worked closely with both of them years ago. Someone she had trusted. Someone she never imagined would be involved. Their expression was calm, almost satisfied. "I knew you would come," they said softly. Sandra's voice trembled. "Why are you doing this?" The person stepped closer, stopping just a few feet away. "Because you both deserve the truth," they said, "and because what happened that day changed more than just you." They looked at her with unreadable eyes. "I saw you break, I saw him try to help, and I saw how easily someone could manipulate your fear." Sandra swallowed. "Why send those messages? Why threaten me?" The person sighed. "I wasn't threatening you. I was forcing you to finally speak the truth, because if you didn't, someone else would, someone who would not care about the damage." They paused. "I am not your enemy. I am the one who tried to protect you back then too, but you never noticed." Sandra felt confusion mix with fear. "Protect me from what?" she whispered. "From the person who whispered the lie into your ear," they said softly. "From the person who wanted to tear you and Keanu apart, from someone who envied your connection." Her heart raced. "Who?" she whispered. The person looked at her with steady eyes. "Someone who left the industry years ago, someone who acted out of jealousy, someone who believed Keanu trusted you more than them." Sandra's breath shook softly. "They're still trying to hurt me," she whispered. "Yes," the person said. "They found out you and Keanu are working together again, and they think exposing the past will damage both of you." Sandra stepped back, her voice small. "So what do they want?" "Chaos," the person said. "Attention, maybe revenge, but they will not stop." Sandra felt cold panic returning. "Then what am I supposed to do?" The person took a step closer. "Tell him everything," they said. "Tell him the full truth before the other person does. Once the truth is between the two of you, it cannot be used against you." Sandra glanced back toward the car, where Keanu waited with tense eyes. The person followed her gaze. "He is the one person who will never turn this into something ugly," they said softly. "He always cared about you, he still does." Sandra felt tears forming. "I was afraid he would walk away," she whispered. The person shook their head. "He won't." She breathed in shakily. "So this ends with honesty?" "Yes," they said. "It always should have." With that, the person slowly stepped back. "You are free to leave," they added gently. "Just promise me one thing." Sandra blinked through her tears. "What?" "Stop carrying a burden that was never yours." She nodded weakly. The person walked away silently until they disappeared behind the corner of the building. Sandra stood still for several moments, letting the truth wash over her, letting the fear subside, letting the relief sink in. When she finally turned back toward the car, Keanu stepped out, walking quickly toward her with concern in his eyes. "Are you okay?" he asked, cupping her arms gently. She nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. "Yes," she whispered, "but I need to tell you everything, the full truth, no more silence." Keanu held her face gently between his hands, his voice warm, steady, and safe. "I am here," he whispered. "Tell me." She took a deep breath, and for the first time in years, she finally told him the whole truth. Every fear, every wound, every feeling, every moment she had been too scared to share. He listened with full attention, full compassion, full patience. And when she finished, when her breath finally softened into a trembling exhale, he whispered the words she had needed for so long. "You were never alone. You will never be alone. Not now, not ever." She broke into quiet tears, and he pulled her into his arms, holding her with the tenderness she had always been afraid to accept. The past no longer held her hostage. The truth no longer lived in the shadows. And the connection between them, once shaken by lies and silence, finally stood on solid ground. As the morning sunlight spread slowly across the lot, Sandra breathed freely for the first time in years. And she knew, with a deep, calm certainty, this was the moment Keanu truly changed her life.